After over 10 years of painting with watercolors, going from work that looks like this to work that looks like that, I've realized that what holds most people back from improving their skills and actually enjoying the process without constantly feeling frustrated or like giving up has nothing to do with talent or technique. It almost always comes down to the same things that nobody really talks about. So in this video, I wanted to share some of the top 3 things I found that really separate the people who improve and feel excited from the ones who get frustrated and give up. And these are the things that I wish someone had told me when I just started out or just was early in my watercolor painting journey. Now, the first thing is this. To really improve at watercolor and to really create those paintings that you imagine or just want to see happening on paper, it doesn't just come from practice alone or from just practicing more. It really comes from a genuine desire, almost like this healthy obsession. Because you can have the best tools, you can learn all the techniques, but first and foremost, you need to have this genuine desire to understand. And not just the idea of liking watercolor or liking the idea of being able to paint, but genuinely wanting to get to the bottom of it, to really figure it out. And this is what I believe made the biggest difference in my own painting practice, because instead of just jumping mediums like I used to, never really feel like good at anything, I decided to focus on just one and really understand it. And I remember when I was learning watercolor painting and I tried to learn and get better at it, my results were super random. Especially in the beginning, I was like, how do I get this vibrant purple? How do I get this vibrant green? Because sometimes I got the results I wanted, but sometimes I didn't. And I had no idea what I did differently. So I thought, okay, I need to figure this out. And I didn't figure it out by, just following more tutorials, because in tutorials, you often just learn the steps of how to create a specific project, because the artist usually already made all the decisions for you, and they just show you kind of like the process behind this project, like a demonstration, but you don't really understand why they're doing what they're doing unless they're actually explaining it. And once I started understanding the principles of watercolor and really understanding what goes into creating a painting, I realized that behind everything all these artists are creating is really just the same foundation, the same principles, just applied differently in different ways, in different scenarios. And once I started figuring this out, I started teaching this as well, because I didn't want to just show people, follow me and this is what you'll get when you follow me. But I really wanted to show exactly what goes into creating a painting. Why these colors, why this technique, why this order, and really help them to learn how to make their own decisions and use these decisions in their own paintings. But again, to get to this stage, you really need to be genuinely interested, like genuinely interested in this medium, genuinely curious and almost obsessed about that. And I see a lot of people who just like the idea of watercolor painting and being able to paint one day, and that's totally fine, because maybe watercolor isn't just your priority right now, or it's not your medium. Like maybe you identify yourself more with acrylic and you're more drawn to that naturally, because sometimes we just have those kind of like preferences where we're like, okay, I like this, but I'm not so obsessed with this thing that I want to spend most of my time with. But I also see sometimes that people just had a bad experience with watercolor. Maybe a teacher was just totally mean to you and they told you that you're just bad at watercolor or not talented enough in painting at all. Or maybe you tried watercolor, but you just didn't use the right tools and the whole experience was just terrible. Yeah, you just blamed yourself. But if some part of you is still thinking about watercolor and still curious about learning it and how do those artists are creating these beautiful watercolor paintings and you still feel that pull, I want you to follow that, because maybe you just didn't have the right teacher, maybe you didn't have the right tools, maybe you focused on the wrong things, and maybe you just didn't have the right guidance yet. Because here's what I've seen happen over and over. Because once you start focusing on the right things and you have the right guidance, watercolor actually becomes more and more addictive. Like, you actually get more and more excited about watercolor painting. You realize, wait a second, I can do this, I can do that. I didn't know you can do this with watercolor. And you just get pulled in more and more. Like, you get deeper and deeper into this medium and just obsessed about it. I always say, like, I'm kind of like the ambassador of watercolor, because I'm so deep in watercolor painting that I don't know how anyone else can not like it. And I think watercolor is the best. And when you have this obsession will carry you through all the different ups and downs in this practice. And this brings me to the next point, because even when you develop this desire, or maybe you already had this desire for watercolor painting and to learn watercolor painting, even when you obsess with this medium and start seeing the results you want to see, you quickly realize something. The goalpost always moves, because there's never really that point where you arrive, where you just, roll out of bed and create a masterpiece every single time, where everything you create is just perfect and you're always completely happy with what you create. Because as you develop your skills, you also develop the way you see. And because the way you see changes, you start noticing things that aren't as great anymore, things that you just couldn't even see before. And a lot of people think that they will just arrive at some point where they have mastered water control, color mixing, the principles, and from that point on, everything just works. But it actually doesn't happen that way, because you always adjust, you always refine. You could paint something today and feel like, okay, this is like the most amazing thing that I've ever painted. And then a year later, you look back and you notice all the things that could be better. And this is not being negative about your art or feeling like, oh my gosh, this was such a failure. It just happens because your eyes have grown and you start seeing more things. And I experience this all the time. And especially when it's a freshly painted project where I'm like overly happy with the result, but still there's something not clicking and I can't really name exactly what this could be. So what I usually do is I just put it somewhere to the side where I can see it still. So when I move around, walk around my room, I can kind of like pass by this painting and look at it from like different angle sides and just from different time of the day. And oftentimes what happens, like even the next day, and when I look at the painting, I see exactly what I'm not fully happy with. Because usually this distance really gives you this perspective, and something's just, you get like fresh eyes, maybe the painting fairies did something, and you just suddenly see what you couldn't see the day before, for example. And this happens at every level. You develop, you see more, your skills develop, you're always evolving and you start noticing things. And it's actually a good thing, because this allows you to refine your skills, refine the way you paint something, and you can apply it in your next art. And it's like also like a new level, new devil type of situation, because your eyes often improve faster than your skills, your hands. So you start seeing in your art what all the things that could be better, because you know that it could be better, but your technique or your skills aren't quite there yet to match what you're seeing or what you want to achieve. So that's why you still just want to kind of focus on refining your skills until your skills catch up with your own vision. And actually, when I realized that my skills and the way I see constantly are in this kind of like evolution and growth journey, it felt really freeing, because this means that I don't need to obsess over this one project until I completely overworked it, or just focusing on this perfect outcome right away. That I don't need to treat every piece that I create like has to be perfect right now. Because I know that in a year or maybe even less, I'll have more skills. I'll be able to see more. I'll be able to capture exactly what I want to capture even better. And right now, this is the best I can do with the skills I have now. And that's enough. I can always come back and paint it again. And you think about it, your paintings are really just like a snapshot of your current skills, like a record, like a diary, a record of where you are right now on your painting journey. And I believe this is something that keeps artists going, kind of like this healthy dissatisfaction, that feeling of, I know it could be better. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm excited to explore it, to refine my skills. And yeah, this kind of like drives you to keep going, to keep refining, to keep pushing, and just enjoy the process of doing it. So don't give up too early. Don't look at a painting that didn't work out the way you wanted and decide that you're a failure or this painting is a failure. It's not a failure. It's really the process. It's the evolution. It's you getting better one painting at a time. And this doesn't happen after like 3 weeks of practice or going through one course on how to paint with watercolors. It's a constant process. That's why inside my watercolor membership, we do lots of different projects, different skills and technique development lessons to really practice all the things that go into creating a painting, because it's a journey. It's an ongoing process of refining your skills in seeing and painting, and just developing your abilities to paint anything you want. And this brings me to the next point. And I think this is something everyone goes through, and I'm sure you also experienced that at some point. Because even when you have the desire, even when you are refining your skills and creating work you're really proud of, there will always be paintings that are a complete hot mess. Because those messy paintings never really go away, especially when you're trying to paint something new. I have projects I've painted many times before, and when I paint something similar, I already have kind of like this solid base to start out with. I know what worked last time, I know what to refine, and when I paint that, it usually works out better than probably if I just painted this for the first time. But when I paint something completely new, like a completely new subject or completely new composition of things, or maybe even more complex than I have painted before, I'm starting from the beginning again. I mean, I know the principles of watercolor and I have already a solid foundation to work with, but it's still a new context. It's a new kind of scenario, and I have to first figure out how to paint it. And I have like kind of like this vision of how it could look like or what I'm going for, but I still need to kind of figure out how to get there first. Like a few years ago, I was working on a waterfall project, and I was trying to figure out how to make it look like a waterfall where the water is moving and soft and blurry. How do I paint the rocks in a way that's simple, but I still can tell that these are rocks? And I did multiple versions where I, just worked on one thing, figured that out, this didn't work, but this worked, let me use this in my next attempt. And I just built on top of each other. So I had just like kind of like messy projects one by one, but they can see the kind of like the evolution to the results that I was happy with. So it's constant like problem solving, figuring it out, and just playing with what you know. And that process of testing, that's exactly what I always encourage my students to do as well. We want to put pen to paper and just put your ideas on paper, try the reference you always wanted to paint, and see what happens. Because once it's out of your system, in front of you, you have something real to work with. And one of the biggest mistakes I see people are making is that they believe that they want the first version to be perfect, and they try to avoid failure. But it's not failure. When you put pen to paper, you have solid information. You can see what actually happening. You can see what worked, what didn't work, what you like, what you prefer, what you might not prefer. And it's not just this abstract version in your head anymore. And this is also where your problem-solving skills come into. What worked, what didn't, and you can think about what you can do differently. It's like your first pancake. It's part of the process. And it's not like this in a cliche way or a cliche part of the process, like where everyone says, like, it's just part of the process. It's literally how you develop the painting you want to see. And sometimes people say to me, I admire how you can paint something 5 times. And I'm like, well, how else do you get to the version you actually like? Like, you do have to paint multiple times and kind of refine what you're doing. Like, it's not downloading, printing through your fingers, and you have this perfect result. Because sometimes you're not even clear about what you want or how you prefer things. You need to first see it in front of you, and then you can actually decide, actually no, I don't like these colors, or actually I don't like this composition because in my head it looked better, or something like that. So you do want to put pen to paper and go through the development of your final project, and then you can always come back to it later with fresh eyes, with new skills, new way of seeing things, and build on that knowledge that you already developed. And again, this is really freeing for me as well when I learned that, because you don't need to over perfect your first version. It's you already start your painting knowing that it won't be your best, and it doesn't have to be the best. It's just part of the process. Like, it's your first project, and you can use what you painted and learn from it. And each version that you create moves you closer and closer to the version that you actually want to create, or you develop or refine or actually get clear on what you want to paint or how you want to paint it. And in the beginning, when I didn't know that this was just part of this whole process, it made me really insecure about my skills, because I was already teaching, and when I would look at my messy painting and all the things that could be different and better, I was questioning my abilities. I was questioning, who am I to teach, and like, what am I even doing? But of course, it won't be amazing the first time I try it if it's something completely new. Like, how could I expect to create a perfect painting of something I have never painted before, or in this scenario, or in this way? Like, it's like so obvious, but like, for me, it felt like a regression. Like, I lost all my skills, all my knowledge. Like, the truth had finally hit that I actually can't paint. But it wasn't regression. It wasn't just going backwards or something like that. It just felt this way because I was pushing into new territories. So whenever you do something that is outside of your comfort zone, outside of something that you already know, of course it feels messy. Of course you start questioning yourself, starting doubting yourself, at like imposter syndrome, because you're just tapping out like your safety zone. And it's totally normal. It doesn't say that you're, again, going backwards. It just like actually tells you or shows you that you're actually moving forward. That's why it's so important to me to teach my students how to create their own paintings, like the foundations, the principles of watercolor, because this is so much more valuable than learning like formulas or blindly following tutorial. Because even when you paint something completely new, you have some solid knowledge to work with. You have the principles, you understand like how watercolor works, like what it wants from you. You can now apply those principles in a completely new context and really mix and match and refine what you're painting. And this is one of the biggest things I see in people who grow as watercolor artists and people who don't. Because some people paint something, get frustrated, and listen to that voice that says, you're not good enough, like what are you even doing here? Without realizing that this is just learning, this is just something new. It's supposed to feel this way. And I know it feels uncomfortable, like to just see something that it could be better, or being exposed to a painting that you maybe feel insecure because maybe you compare yourself to others. And this discomfort is actually a good thing, because again, it means that you're learning. And all these people you see online who post these beautiful masterpieces, they're not just more talented. Some people they are a little bit more naturally talented, But talent is really useless without the obsession, the desire, the growth mindset, without the ability to look at every painting as something to learn from, not as evidence that you might be a failure or your art is a failure. Because everything you create has value, even the mess, even the ones that didn't turn out the way you wanted, they all have purpose. So if you're in the middle of a painting right now, or maybe you just abandoned one, don't stop. Finish it, because you can't judge an unfinished painting. You need to see the whole picture. And then you can ask yourself, like, what do I like here? What did I learn here? And then paint it again, not mindlessly, not just hoping for a different result. I actually want to repaint that with intention, because that refinement, that problem solving, that's where the real skill lives. Again, the messy paintings aren't signs that you're failing or that you're going backwards. They're just signs that you're brave enough to keep pushing forward, learning new things, stepping outside of your comfort zone, and that you're actually learning, that you're getting closer to the paintings, to the results you want to create, closer and closer, one painting at a time. And this happens to everyone, no matter the skill level. It could be someone who's completely new or who has painted for a while, because everyone is just at a different point on the same journey. The people you see online who seem to kind of like paint flawlessly every time, they also have self-doubt. They create messy paintings. They just not maybe share them online, but they also know that this is just part of it, that's just part of the process. And because they know that, they don't take those projects, they don't take it personally. They just keep going. They just paint it again, learn from what they just painted, and then share the final result online. So next time you sit down to paint and it starts feeling hard, or you start hearing that little voice in your head, like telling you all the things, how bad you are, or makes you question yourself and your abilities, remember that it's okay. It's actually good. It means you're learning, you're expanding, you're actually getting outside of your comfort zone. And that's exactly where growth happens. But even with the right mindset, even with the desire and the patience, you might still be wondering, okay, but what exactly do I actually need to know or learn to actually build my skills? What does that actually look like? Watch this video next, where I show you exactly how to practice watercolor in a way that actually builds your skills, so every session moves you forward.